Welcome to Commerce Media Matters, your go-to podcast for unpacking the world of commerce media. Here, we catch up with industry leaders on news, research, insights, perspectives, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Paul, Chief Growth Officer at Voodoo.
And I'm Nick, Founder and CEO at Voodoo.
Now today we're joined by Kiessé Lamour, Global Head of Media Commerce at VML. Now she leads the development and global expansion of the agency's commerce media practice, where she's helping brands connect media investment more directly to those commerce outcomes.
Before joining VML, Kiessé held senior roles at Pinterest and Omnicom Media Group, working across programmatic, paid search, and social. So she's had a pretty unique view across agencies, platforms, and now global commerce strategy.
Absolutely, and it makes her the perfect person to talk about retail media, commerce media, and where it's all heading. So Kiessé, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Really happy to be here.
Great to have you on board. Now, before we get into things, before we dive into it, we'd love to start with you and understand everyone has a different way of coming into this crazy, wild world that we work in. And we'd like to know your story and how you ended up in marketing and media. It's rarely a straight path. How did you find your way into this? What kept you in it for so long? Can we dive into a bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. Listen, I wish I had an epic story to tell, right? Like, when I was a child, I saw an ad on TV and that was my eureka moment. And from that point, I knew that I was made for advertising and marketing. It's not. My story is actually quite boring. And I think this is where you're going to lose all your listeners.
Oh, we don't believe that. We don't believe that.
But when I went to uni, I actually wanted to become a journalist. And then after uni, I went to business school. And in the early days of my career, I had one of my mentors from business school and we were chatting and I was just like, how do I future-proof my career? And he was the one that suggested that, digital advertising was going to be the shit, right? And I should try it. And one thing leading to another, that's how I find myself here. So it was purely opportunistic. It wasn't like I had a dramatic Holy Spirit moment bestowing a special calling upon my life. That wasn't the case at all. And why have I been here for so long? You make me sound so old, Nick.
Not me. No.
Well, I mean, I have remained all this year because when you think about our industry, right, the pace and the rate of innovation is what has kept me here.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to work in so many sectors. I've worked in search, I've worked in programmatic, I've worked in social, I've worked in brand safety, and now I'm in commerce. How many industries do you know that can give you the opportunity to literally reinvent yourself at this pace? I don't know many. So that's why I'm still here and still enjoying the ride. Yeah.
And that rate of innovation, it keeps you young, doesn't it? Because, you're at the
Exactly.
forefront of all the new emerging trends. And, even my 14-year-old son with his new words, I use him as like a sounding board for what's coming next. So
Same. I have a 15-year-old as well and a 9-year-old. So I have to re-update my language all the time and ensure that I'm the cool mom. I don't even know if you say cool anymore. I don't think it's cool to say cool, but
when I try, I'm not given the cool dad status. So retail media, it's grown rapidly over the past few years, but now we're hearing this broader term. I mean, obviously our podcast is called Commerce Media Matters. So this broader term of commerce media. From where you sit, what do you think where retail media is maturing and evolving, and how do you see brands responding to the shifts in retail media specifically?
yeah. So I think it's fair to start by establishing the fact that even though we're starting to hear the broader term of commerce media, retail media still is the king within that ecosystem, right? I believe the estimate right now for 2025 are that commerce media more broadly is going to reach $200 billion globally, but retail media still owns the lion's share of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In saying that, this is the direction of travel that was to be expected, right? I think Amazon was almost like the Moses that parted the Red Sea of retail media, and now everybody wants a share of the pie. So it was bound to happen that at some point, any merchant, and I say merchant because it's just not about retailers, right? You see that in quick commerce, you see that in travel, you see, retail media or commerce media networks popping up there.
Mm-hmm.
Any merchant with deep scaled, hopefully scaled first party data was going to want to create their own network at some point. So, that's the normal direction of travel.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, though, I'm not sure that retail media is maturing, because when you say is maturing, some people might hear that, it has almost reached the point of maturity. I don't think we have. Yes, of course, there is significant capital being invested by retailers to build their networks, to build the ecosystem and the offering. There is significant, advertising dollars from brands going into retail media. I mean, you have entire teams now dedicated to retail media.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side to that is that, search is still king. For the majority of retailers and the majority of brands, the focus still is on search. Of course, we're starting to see on-site display, we're starting to see off-site increase in terms of investment year on year, but search is still king. And then when you think about the education gap, you'll be surprised. I mean, or maybe not, right? There are people that work in commerce that don't properly understand retail media or commerce media, right?
Definitely.
And then you think about the proliferation of retail media. We feel like there is a network popping up out there every other morning. And then I think, when it comes to measurement as well, we're still having, for the most part, very basic conversations around measurement. So yes, certainly retail media is evolving, but to say that it's maturing, I think for me, is a stretch. And I think the last part of your question was regarding brands. How are brands responding to the shift? From a brand perspective, I think a lot of brands are now waking up to the fact that they don't have to follow every shining toy out there. So what we're starting to see, at least with the brands that we're working in, certainly household brands, is that they're starting to gradually consolidate their spend with their most strategic partners, right? The partners where they have joint business objectives, from a retailer perspective, someone that wants to grow the category. From a brand perspective, they want to increase that, market share on that retailer, or, retailers where there is a significant overlap in terms of the audiences, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to talk to people that are going to convert, right? That's the infinite objective for commerce. Or they will focus on retailers that are giving them access to a specific niche that they might not have access to at scale, right, with the omni-channel shopper retailers. So that's what's happening right now. And, it's still evolving. Who knows what's going to happen in 2027?
I like your point about the shiny new toy, because I think initially, early on, there was a lot of these retail media networks popping up, and it was a shiny new toy, and brands are jumping on all of them. But you're right, that we're seeing the same thing in that there's those selected partners, because otherwise it's just too much to manage. I think you have to pick and choose your battle, because the fragmentation is real, and marketers don't have infinite budgets, so they've got to start thinking strategically. Yeah,
exactly. And actually, more than the issue of fragmentation, it's the budget. They don't sit on, pot of gold. Nobody's a leprechaun, right? So they have to strategically decide where to invest and what's the opportunity that's going to deliver value for their businesses. They have targets. And this is what we tend to forget sometimes, that they have targets.
Absolutely. And you've used a word there that I think is really interesting. You referred to a retailer as a merchant. And that's always a word that kind of stands out to me, because I've got family who consider they're in retail, but they consider themselves merchants, not retailers. They're merchants. Now, our commentary regards to maturity, right? How can this space be advanced or mature when it's being developed by merchants? And I would think that an agency, or the role that you play, you need to find that balance between innovation, but also what you're talking about is, what do they need now? Search is still king. This is still king. So how do you wrestle that, what's really important now versus what bringing innovation into it, talking to a whole bunch of people who are still merchants and are trying to be advertising, executives at the same time? What's the balance there? How do you guys go about ensuring that you've got the right mix?
Well, you have to go back to the why. And I think if you can't answer the question why, you shouldn't do something. And for us working in commerce, the why, they're very simple for brands. Brands don't advertise for the ego or the vanity or the pleasure of advertising. They advertise because they need to move those products off shelves.
They want a result. Yeah.
Absolutely.
They advertise, exactly. They advertise because, they need to make a difference to the bottom line.
Yeah.
So when we think about, all the opportunities out there across the funnel, top to bottom, we have very specific objectives that we need to reach. And it's about, okay, who are the people or what are the opportunities that are going to enable us to reach those objectives? As simple as that. As simple as that.
Yeah.
That enables us to keep out the noise and keep out the distractions.
Kiessé, do you think retailers, because of that closed loop attribution, because of the promise that they've got, are they becoming serious competitors to the traditional publishers?
Honestly, I think that's a bullshit question. Forgive me for saying that. That's the French side of me that just came out.
Tell me straight. No, we like it.
Because when you go back to the fundamental of business, and especially when you consider the fundamentals of business in the current economic context, right? We still are in an inflationary context. And businesses have targets and businesses don't have infinite budget. So when you look at it from that perspective, everything is competing with everything. It isn't just retailer A competing with retailer B or retailer A competing with publisher A. It's about the opportunities competing against each other that's going to make it to that P&L, right? So it's about advertising competing with the need to invest in retail fundamentals. It's about, advertising competing with the need to invest in digital shelves. It's about advertising competing with some random project in, IT. That's the real competition. And everybody has got to prove the value that they're going to deliver for the business. That's where the competition lies. It's not about a retailer competing with a publisher. But then there's another thing as well. And I think when you say retailer competing with publisher, I understand where you're coming from, because when you look at it in the context, let's say, of Europe, where we have GDPR and a very strong regulatory environment, right? We've gotten to a point where we work in an industry that is data driven, but data opportunities out there have become scarce, right? You look at the regulation, you look at the decisions that have been made by the Chromes and the Safaris and of this world and the Mozillas of this world. And, all the conversations around, cookie deprecation, et cetera, however, whatever place we found ourselves here today. And the opportunity to have access to really rich, deep, scaled data that enables you to have better understanding about your consumers, their preferences, their behaviors, has become quite scarce, right? And of course, retailers seem to hold the holy grail of that data, of that information. And by virtue of that, everybody in the industry thinks that, now retailers are going to be the only kings of advertising and, where we're all going to throw our money. Sure. But again, that's short-sighted, because you have to look at it also from the side of the consumer. Paul, Nick, Kiessé, we are all consumers. Do we spend 24/7 of our times on retailers' website? No, right? We split our time across retailers, across, social, across website and listening to radio, watching some TV, blah, blah, blah. And for a brand, they need, what are they following? They're following the eyeball. They need to be able to reach their consumers in places that matters and where their consumers are. So, there still is a place for the traditional publishers or traditional media, however you want to call them. It isn't just a retailer's game by virtue of how we behave in both the online and offline world.
Yeah, absolutely. In some of the conversations we've had, there has been sort of the comments made that, retail media is a little bit about shifting more trade dollars rather than actually shifting the media budgets into their environments. Would you say that we're at the tipping point now, taking into account what you said, that, that brands need all the channels still, but are we seeing brand dollars now, true brand dollars shift into the retail media channel?
It depends. It varies from one brand to another, to be fair. There isn't one single unified answer that defies defines all the brands out there. With some of the brands that we've worked with, yes, definitely, it's just a matter of taking from Paul and giving to Peter, and this is where they're shifting the trade dollars, and there isn't necessarily net new money being created. But with other brands, we actually seeing that pot of money coming from trade, coming from decom, coming from brands, and it really depends on where a brand is on their journey, their degree of sophistication when it comes to commerce, when it comes to retail media. I am yet to see a one size fits all across all the brands that I've worked with. It really depends.
They always take from Paul and give it to Peter, Kiessé. It's never a good outcome for me.
Or Paul give it to Nick.
We're seeing a lot of consolidation across platforms, retail media networks, and agencies. We've seen a lot of that happening over the last, say, 18 months on a really large scale. Beyond the headlines, what does consolidation actually mean in practical terms for brands and agencies trying to navigate this commerce ecosystem? And I'd probably dovetail another question there to say, let's actually unpack retail media networks popping up every week. Surely we're going to start to see some consolidation there as well.
And that's actually a very good question, and thank you for asking that.
Well, I actually think that's not probably a bullshit question. I think it's a probably spot-on question. Would you say, Paul?
Leave Paul alone.
Yeah. Peter's already robbed me. It's fine.
No, but to answer your question, Nick, when you say consolidation, and certainly in our industry, especially in the current context, when you hear consolidation, it sounds so scary. It sounds so dramatic.
It does.
For, valid reasons. But in the heart of it all, consolidation simply is about simplification.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's all it means, right? Simplification. And it doesn't mean that because you're consolidating, it doesn't mean that because you're simplifying, that all the complexity is going to disappear overnight. It won't.
No.
What it means as well, for brands, for agency, is how do we make things a little bit easier for ourselves? How do we make things a little bit streamlined? So we are going to look at, defining ways of working. We are going to look at, defining our tech stack. We are going to look at defining processes that enable us to navigate an ecosystem that is complex and that will continue to remain complex. I've been in this industry for 20 years. And over the past 20 years, we've been talking about the same problems, the same issues, the same challenges. Complexities. It hasn't changed. Fragmentation. It hasn't changed. And quite frankly, I'm getting bored about that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it seems that we will never get to a point where we're going to be very simplified, very, unfragmented. Let's more focus around defining the systems that enable us to navigate that ecosystem a little bit better. And that's what consolidation is about.
Kiessé, we've talked a bit about the other channels, and I guess now with technology, most of those surfaces, so social, CTV, all these surfaces now can become transactional. So the word retail media is probably not right. It's just media that you can transact from right across the board. With all these opportunities, do you think it's oversaturated, this commercial opportunity, this retail opportunity, or is there still a role for pure brand, or is it all got to now have some way of that call to action, of that transactional layer?
I think you're asking that question because you are looking at it from the industry point of view, right? And sure, if you look at it from an industry point of view, it feels like a lot. It feels overwhelming. It feels like, maybe it's a race to the bottom and, a race to diluting consumer experiences. However, I would like to challenge you to look at it from a consumer perspective, right? What do you want, Paul? What do you want, Nick? What do I want, Kiessé? When we are consuming content online, we don't want to be interrupted.
You want the seamless experience. Yep.
Exactly. You want a seamless experience. You don't want your experience to be interrupted. And you want anything that interacts with that experience to enhance whatever it is that you're doing, right?
100%. Couldn't agree more.
It's about the merging of retail and media to the point where I don't think, like you've said, we'll get to a point where we're not talking about retail media anymore. It's just going to be media, where every transactional point becomes a media outlet. Every media outlet becomes a transactional point. Is there to serve the consumer. We're trying to enhance the experience. We're trying to remove friction. We are trying to compress the commerce funnel from discovery to purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as a consumer, certainly enjoy the fact that when I am watching Prime Video, that there is an ad on Amazon and there is a sticker that appears to tell me to just send that information to my email or add directly to cart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want the faff of having to, oh my God, I need to pause my video, I need to get out of my video, I need to go on my phone. And I don't want that. I want something that enables me to do all of that seamlessly without creating friction with whatever it is that I'm doing right now. And this is what's happening. We are, and the industry is launching the sophistication and those opportunities in an attempt to really address, consumer experience.
Well, I hope so. Sometimes I think we do it because of commercial reasons and we lose sight of the actual end result, which you've nailed.
Absolutely.
It's got to be about the consumer. It's got to be about losing friction. And if you do that right, then the commerce will flow and everyone will make money.
It's got to be about the customer experience, right?
100%.
Exactly. You always have to put the customer at the center. And do you know what? I'm actually not fussed about the fact that we do it for commercial reasons. I mean, none of us work for a charity. We all work for the money, right? And, our bills are not going to pay for themselves. In saying that, though, right, we also have to trust human judgment, right? You can put a ton of stuff out there, but brands and consumers are going to decide what they advocate for. They're going to decide what they vote for. And ultimately, with enough time, the shite never wins.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It fizzles out. It fizzles out. And there's always, space for the good, right? So I have faith in that. It's like we might all get distracted and start testing everything and buying everything. There's always a tipping point where you're like, that's a loads of crap in it, and then you become a little bit more focused about where you spend your time and where you spend your money. I still believe in that. Maybe it's utopian, but I still believe in that.
I love how you're calling it how it is. It's great. It's refreshing. We talk a lot about advertising creativity and, the power of creativity and, Cannes Lions. It's all about the power of creativity. As commerce capabilities become more prevalent and more surfaces become more transactional and the media is a transactional point and vice versa, as you said, how important does creativity become in helping the brand stand out? And, what do we need to do differently or better in these environments that are transactional so that we don't lose the sense of what creativity is?
So you said how does creativity become? And when you say that, the way I hear it, and maybe because English is not my first language, it's like creativity never was, right? So it's like, no, creativity was, still, and will be the element that enables brands to differentiate, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way I see creativity is that it is how consumers experience your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity is how you, as a brand, articulate and translate your unique selling point, your unique value, your point of differentiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is incredibly important. I mean, we've all seen the stat out there that, creativity accounts for 60% of the performance of the campaign, and some people go even to up to 70%. So if you want to stand out, creativity is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a brand, if you remember in the beginning, I said brands don't advertise for the pleasure of advertising, right?
They're there to sell something. We're there to make money.
Exactly. You got to sell money. You got to move those products off shelves. But it isn't about renting people's attention, because the only way that you continue to grow as a brand is when you're able to convert people from being simply shoppers, occasional shoppers that buy once, in a while, or maybe they buy once and never come back. You want to translate those people from being just shoppers, so moving away from a transactional relationship into making them become fans. And every brand wants that. Every brand wants to reach the Apple status, whereby people will queue for hours to get the new iPhone or whatever it is. Because, you build a consumer base that will follow you whenever, whatever. And that is part of what continues to fuel growth for you as a brand. You don't want people that just tap in, tap out. That's not sustainable. That is not sustainable. And creativity is how, one of the ways that you do it, and it's still very important.
We couldn't agree more. I guess I'm a little bit skeptical that we've nailed the ability to be creative in retail channels.
Oh, no, we haven't.
I mean, I think that there's a long way to go for brands to be able to express their creativity, to make those brand connections, to stand out in retail channels. It sounds like you agree.
Yeah, I totally agree, because retail media actually maybe is a victim of its own name. Because the minute you say retail, everybody says bottom funnel and so on and so forth, transactional. And that sometimes maybe is the problem, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But ultimately, it isn't just about trying to convince people to buy. It's about making people feel something. I remember you because you made me feel something. Not necessarily because of what you said. I may not remember what you said, but I remember how you made me feel. And it's the same dynamic between brand and consumers. And I think this is what people often forget, that when you are dealing in advertising, you're dealing in psychology. Right? So we shouldn't forget those basic fundamentals. And if we look at retail media simply as, it's all about transaction, we start behaving in a transactional manner and we completely forget, brand building, etc. And that still is important.
Absolutely.
In or outside of retail media, right?
A nice segue. It's been almost a whole podcast before we've got to the subject of AI. Do you think that AI is going to play an important role in creativity? Do you think it's going to replace creativity as we know it? With the emergence of Nano Banana and all these amazing, the traditional process, the copywriting, the Mad Men era of creative is still going to be relevant.
AI is here to stay, right? Let me just put it out there.
It's not going away.
It's not going away. It's here to stay. However, I fundamentally believe that we need to see and treat AI as a co-creator, not a shortcut. Okay? For all intent and purposes, and all the amount of ideas and stuff that you can generate with AI doesn't have the ability to create. And I say that again, AI doesn't have the ability to create, and talk less about creating something that is truly original. AI generates. Okay? It still is our job. It still is our responsibilities as human, with the human brains that we have, to bring in the strategy. That's not AI's job. To bring in the intuition, the human nuances, the cultural understanding and relevance that turn, ideas into things that truly make a difference. To be fair, I'm willing to die on that hill.
I love the passion.
I don't believe the narrative that AI is going to replace the human brain, or AI is going to replace human. AI is going to replace certain processes. AI is going to replace certain ways of working. But if we believe the narrative that AI is going to replace creativity, strategy, we basically are saying that AI is going to replace us as people. And that's a danger. That's the end of our civilizations. And I don't believe in that. But I believe that the same way electricity was here to stay, but did not replace the sun.
I like it.
AI is here to stay, but it's not going to replace the human brain. Period.
I like it too. Like you co-create angle is fascinating.
It's a sort of the David Droga said the same thing. He said it's a tool for further creativity for humans.
Exactly.
It allows the creatives to unlock even more.
Exactly. When you start co-creating with AI and using it as a partner, as part of the creative process, what it enables you to do, it really enables you to expand your imagination and stretch your thinking and take you in directions that you never would have thought of. But, even with that ability, it still can't replace the human brain.
My second question that we talked about earlier, you said search is still king. I mean, we're hearing from retailers that search is not as reliable, that they're just not getting the results anymore because there is enough of a shift. I mean, you said 30%. That's still a big chunk of the audience that is now, instead of going Google, what's the best product for X, they're going to a conversational LLM and having a conversation to get to where they want to go. And at this point, retailers and other things are struggling to show up in there and struggling to have that work into their traditional models where, search was at the top of the funnel. They got them into their environment. And as soon as they got them into their environment, that's when they went to work.
Yeah, I see it differently. I see it as the evolution of search. In saying that, and I use the term evolution because what I'm trying to say with that is that I don't think it's going to necessarily replace consumers going to a retailer's app or a retailer's website, right? I see LLMs as another channel as part of the consumer journey, right? Because even though you say 30% is a lot, there's still 70% of people out there that aren't necessarily using this as their first port of call, right? So what needs to happen is retailers need to start thinking about potentially how they develop their own AI and models, that sits on their website that enables people to really move quickly from discovery to purchase. And then, of course, they need to see how they collaborate with the third-party AIs and your Gemini, your ChatGPT, your Copilot, etc. But I think that the question isn't just on the retailers. The question is also on brands, right?
Absolutely.
Within that ecosystem, the biggest challenge that I see is how brands are going to build their content so it's AI ready and can be cited by those AI models, right? And also from a consumer perspective, are we really to trust what we see on those AI models, right? I think the question is wider than just, it's going to replace da-da-da. No, there are consumer trust parameters to take into account. There are brands changes that we need to take into account because all of that plays a role in whether, that massive shift is going to happen. I use, AI, third-party and embedded endemic AI platforms. But sometimes I don't necessarily find, especially in the context of commerce, I don't necessarily find those answers to feed what I'm looking for. And then what do? I revert to going back to a retailer's website because I'm like, the options are a bit limited. Yes, of course, the options are going to be limited because not all brands have built their content so that it can be cited. So you will be playing in the same pool of content that's being resurfaced. And then when you add, commercial intent behind it, you're like, okay, the recommendations that I'm getting, am I really getting because they are the best recommendations, or am I getting it because, the people pushing those recommendations are in service of, their advertising money? So they're all those questions that we ask ourselves, our consumers, we ask ourselves, our brands. But, unequivocally, what I would say is that it's here to stay and brands have to evolve, retailers have to evolve, but it's not going to replace. It's going to be one more tool in the toolbox. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Very thoroughly. Kiessé, you touched on adoption. Let's just go there. And actually, the other key word I want to talk about is trust, because you've talked about that. And we recently had Bill Fisher and from eMarketer, and he talks about trust and quality. Trust is really important. I think there's also a trust thing that happened with ChatGPT and their instant checkout. I think trust plays a massive role. But just coming back to what you're saying in regards to it's a channel, we're early. I like to think of AI as it's 1996 and it's dial-up. We have got so much more to go. We're not even close. Google's launched, but it hasn't scaled yet. It's not 2002. We are so early in this. I'm picking up on your position that you are rooted in reality,
Yeah.
right? So you wrestle innovation and being able to understand. And we talked about your career, having the opportunity to innovate and re-emerge and redevelop your career and innovate. But I get the sense that you're really cautious and careful, and you've got a lens there that you protect your customers or your consumers, the customers of your clients, about what is the right activation, what is the right executions. How do you manage that narrative with brands in the region that you're in, which is European based, versus the fire hydrant of noise that comes out of, say, North America around where we need to go? Because adoption in some areas of your market, and you'll know better than I, are probably slower and will take longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to get your take on that. Brands want to move fast, but it sounds like that you keep them rooted in reality, which is not a bad thing. That's great.
We have to. You mentioned the duality between North America, fire hydrant. Is that what you say, fire hydrant? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Europe. When it comes to the US, right? And you've said it beautifully. I love that, fire hydrant. There is a strong appetite for rapid experimentation, right? And the general attitude, and I'm sure I'm going to get flamed for saying that, to technological advancement, and certainly AI is no different, is, move fast, rapid experimentation, break things, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And I'm not necessarily even criticizing that approach, right? Because it has worked well. When you look at the degree and the rate of innovation, a lot of the innovation from a technological point of view has come out of the US, right?
Yeah.
However, right, in the European context, we tend to be a little bit more conservative. We tend to be a little bit more cautious because we have the regulatory environment that naturally will enable us to do that. So we tend to look at things from the context of privacy. We tend to look at things from the context of consumer trust. We tend to look at it from the context of, the potential wider implication on our democracies, and the power and the role that technology can play within that. It isn't just a commercial conversation, right? We have a degree of responsibility towards our democracies, towards our citizens, right? Exactly, towards society.
A societal consideration, right?
Exactly. And that is very important. And certainly, when you look at the drama that unfolded a few weeks ago between OpenAI, the Pentagon, and, Anthropic, that cements why Europe approaches technology the way we approach technology, right? It is important.
Yep.
It isn't just a commercial conversation. It's a societal conversation. And I think, when we are dealing with our clients, we bring all of those to the core. Even when you go back to the commercial element of that conversation, it's like, as a brand, every move you make, can have tremendous impact.
Put you at risk.
Exactly. Put you at risk. So, you have to also be careful and cautious in the way that you embrace those technology. How much does it expose you or not? How much are you playing into a narrative or not? And now, when you think about the consumer, putting the consumer back in the middle, and I've called them consumer, but we should talk about people, because they're not just consumers. They're also people that have values, and all of that has an intrinsic, symbiotic relation that we can't ignore.
This has been phenomenal. This is going to have to be a part 1. We're coming back for more.
Thank you.
Kiessé, that was brilliant. So super engaging. Now, we do something on the podcast, a little bit of a quick fire question game just to end it up, just to lighten up at the end.
Okay, cool.
Okay, question number 1. What is the last thing that you bought online?
A T-shirt.
Okay. What podcast are you listening to currently right now? Of course, we know it's always this one, but what other podcast is there?
I'm listening to She-Commerce. And
She-Commerce.
and I'm listening to Slow the Fuck Down. as well.
Oh, okay, I like it.
Nice.
What's your go-to online store? Your go-to online shop?
Ooh, Amazon and Etsy.
Amazon
And Etsy. Yeah.
Okay.
And Etsy
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you TikTok? And if you do, are you a watcher or are you a poster? Do you participate?
I made the decision 15 years ago to not use social media.
Wow.
So I'm not on TikTok.
Okay. And the last question, you were talking about that path that you weren't inspired by an ad to jump into advertising, but everybody has that memorable ad that they just love. So is there one that you can remember from your childhood or one that you just has resonated with you always that was just super creative? What's that most memorable ad campaign that you can remember?
Honestly, it's a brand. I don't know if the brand still exists. It used to be a margarine brand when I was a child growing up in Africa. And the brand was called Blue Band. I think it was a Dutch margarine brand. And they just had this ad that went dun 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 dun. I don't remember the words, but yeah, and I just loved the jingle. And every time I think about that ad, oh, it fills my heart.
Yeah,
with so
it's
much
literally
joy.
lighting you up.
Creativity. Yeah, we were talking about it before, weren't we? Yeah.
Creativity.
Differentiator.
Yeah, there you go.
Gets it every time.
Kiessé, it's such an awesome session. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for joining us. We've been very engaged and it's been a great chat. Thank you.
It's been amazing. Thank you, Kiessé. Incredible.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast. I really enjoyed my time here.
Thank you for listening to the Commerce Media Matters podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe. We're always on the pulse of the ever-changing landscape of commerce media, ready to share the newest trends, insightful perspectives, and expert opinions with you. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep making media that matters. This podcast is executively produced and edited by Priya Tahazadeh, with co-producers Sandy Ho and me, Rachel Fang. This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Bidjigal, Gadigal, and Wurundjeri people, and we wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land.